Good afternoon, everybody. I'm back once again with another board game review. This is a vintage board game from 1972, and I wanted to present this to you for a while now, so now's my chance. Anyway, this is from a company named Sell Shao and Writer, who's also famous for doing the not only Parcheesi, but also the Trivial Pursuit games. I'm pretty sure you guys remember that. And their usual logo looks like the little pie things, basically. The little wedges that you stick inside the pie when you answer a question right in Trivial Pursuit. So that's exactly what the logo normally is. But I think it came out later because in 1972, apparently it's not on this box, not even on the edges, as you can see. Now there's nothing underneath on the back side of the cover, so there's just the graphics on here and some on the side, maybe a little synopsis. But today we're going to be not only reviewing, I'll tell you a little bit of how to play the game. It's a lot like Clue, another deduction mystery game where you're playing a detective and trying to figure out the crime, except in this version you're not playing one of the suspects, which is pictured on the box. There's how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 suspects. Not only are you finding the suspect, the room it was done in, the weapon it was done with, but also you're finding out what the motive is. So I'm going to pause this real quick, read a little bit of the synopsis, the introduction to the game, and show you the board and its contents. If you just give me a sec, I'll be right back, okay? Thank you. Okay, so we're back again, and on the back of the front cover are the instructions, which in most vintage older games, that was usually the case, which was great. Like, I wish that a lot of the board games published nowadays would do this or go back to this, because it's easier to keep track of the rules and you don't have to worry about losing them, especially if you're reselling it or whatever the case may be. Like, you still have them available on the back cover. So this is a game for 2 to 6 players, as you can see, the contents it comes with, and the foreword. So for the millions of people, young and old, who delight in detective and mystery stories, represent WHODUNIT. A murder has been committed somewhere on the splendid Swinford estate, and the players look through the mansion for clues to the crime. In true-to-life manner, the combinations of suspect, weapon, scene, and motive are different with each game. The culprit must be brought to justice, and the innocent suspects must be cleared. How good a detective are you? Can you discover who done it? So that's the kind of cheesy introduction. I want you to get into this groovy style board game for a minute. I mean, keep in mind it was the 70s, and I love it. I really love the antiquity of this. Each room, we'll start with, this is the main entrance, and as you can see, these are the pawns. They're all wooden, and they look like little potion bottles, very antique looking. You got your wooden red dice with the gold painted pips. And then here you have the parlor entrance, which, you know, there's sofas, there's mantles, there's pictures hung. It's like a night area, rugs and carpets. You got your armchairs, various pieces of furniture painted on there in a very groovy style way. I love the vintage feel of this. And then over here is the library entrance, and these circles represent the clues. So they're color coded. So the blue in the library represents the motive. So each clue gives you a word description describing the motive. So, and then over here is the conservatory entrance in yellow, and this is the scene of the crime. So you'll get various words. Again, each clue is led by 3 words. So there's no really like any picture cards like there are in Clue. And yeah, this is your standard roll and move game, but a lot of people like it for, you know, to be a roll and move game. It's something that they enjoy. I read on Board Game Geek that that's the reason why. It's a nice variation from the Clue games. So I believe there was another version of this done, only one other version, 1985 by the same company. And I also have that. I'll have to show that one to you. But this is the trophy room. So you can see like there's a dead stuffed cheetah rug, which always freaks me out. I've never actually seen one in person. I don't think I want to, but yeah, kind of creepy. And the purple room, how appropriate, in the trophy room, it's actually describing the weapon. So these purple circles represent the weapon. Now, with the circles, instead of the card, you know, yet another deviation from the Clue games, you get these round chips describing a person, place, or thing. So here, these green chips are describing the suspect. So neat, mean, tall, thin, and dark. And then unplanned for the motive, heated, vicious, senseless, and bold, describing the motive. And over here, in mustard yellow, the scene of the crime. So it's indoors, dusty, cold, dim, and damp. And last but not least, you have words describing the weapon, which are sharp, shiny, heavy, metal, and small. So there's 5 chips describing each major clue to help you figure out the crime. And what you do is you shuffle these face down after you separate them into their color-coded piles. And you're only going to pick 3 to put on the board after you shuffle them. And what you do with the rest, the clues that you don't necessarily need to figure out who done it, they become basically alibis, whatever words are left over. So originally, if you're only playing with 3 to 6 players, each person just gets 1 chip. But if you're playing with 2, there's a variation, which isn't included in these instructions in this version of the game, only in the 1985 version. But if you're doing 2 players, you're getting 2 chips just to make it easier and a quicker game instead of 1. So that way, like let's say I get 1 of each. You would mark it off on your detective sheet, kind of like when you would get the cards from the Clue game. So let's say, you know, mean and senseless. I like to put these other chips away towards the main entrance, which is what you're supposed to do with the rest of the chips after they're handed out, if there's like fewer players, or more players I should say. This is the Detective WHODUNIT detective sheet, and you're just marking off mean. So as you can see, this describes Sir Henry Swynford, which is one of the characters I'll show you in a bit. And of course it's in the parlor, and he's neat, dark, and mean. Then you have Dr. Lucifer Miles, neat, tall, and mean, and then so on and so forth. So next to these words are little squares, and then you would mark A for alibi or C for clue. So if you land on one of these spots by exact count and you get a clue, you can mark it as C, because that's what you need to discover who done it. That's what you want in order to win. Now the alibis are what not, but then it helps you to eliminate process of elimination, just like in Clue, where you deduct what is and what isn't. So even if you just have one A, one alibi, in the midst of these three words, you know that that couldn't possibly be the suspect, weapon, scene, or motive. So you would cross that out even if it just has the one A. Now you want to look out for the clues. So whatever you mark with a C, keep track of until you get all three C's. And that's the only way you could really get a clue, because you can only get alibis from other players when you voice a suspicion, which is like, two detectives interrogating, investigating each other, what they think they know or might know, to gauge, the mystery of the whole situation. So I want to pause this. This is the Clue soundtrack by John Morris, and it's getting a little loud. But anyway, so this is how the WHODUNIT cards work. If you take a card, and let's say I'm gonna be black for this instance, and my opponent will be red. So I land on a take a card space, and you would just take one of these WHODUNIT cards, which go here in the center of the game, where it's marked cards. They get shuffled, put face down on that spot, and then suspects, which are 10, you would put them right in the middle. I love the lettering of this too. It just looks like one of those old like horror novels. Then the discards pile is strictly for when a WHODUNIT card is played, which you have to take when you land on this. You don't have a choice. So you'd flip it over, read the directions of what it tells you to do. Here it tells you go to clue of your choice, which is great because it helps you go to any clue on the board. I can go over here, flip this over without the other players knowing it if there's a chip there. So I'm gonna flip this one over, and it tells me, oops, sorry, that was yellow. It tells me that the suspect is neat. So it could be the maid, who apparently is neat. So, that's basically it. You'd never show the players when you flip over one of those discs. And you have to race. It sort of becomes like this race to the finish line to get to the hall entrance by exact count. And then you have to voice your accusation. When you do that, you pull one of the suspect cards out, which is what these are for. It's just a visual of the different suspects that are on the cover of the box as well. So here you have the Lady of the English Manor, which is Lady Swynford. Then you have Sir Henry Swynford, which I guess is the gentleman or the master of the manor. You have your butler, who clearly looks suspicious. The butler did it. Actually, the other game I played with my friend not too long ago, like 2 or 3 days ago, the butler was the killer. So Butler Carruthers in blue. Love these drawings and these paintings. They're just so like vintage, cool looking. Maid Abigail, who's, the prime suspect now because, she's neat. She's described as neat in the detective sheet. Then you have Dr. Lucifer Miles, which has that devilish look to him. I like his beard and his stash. Very cool. Nurse Blanche. Kind of reminds me of one of those like soap operas with the wicked nurse, like in Dynasty. When the baby was kidnapped. Oh my goodness, that was such a great episode. Anyway, Nurse Blanche. Then you have Colonel Salisbury, who is a guest of the manor, but also a suspect. Henrietta Maudlin, or Maudlin in purple. Love her bun. She definitely has this like wicked stepmother look to her. Flowers in the attic type of situation. Roxanne Hallgrove, which is like the sexy mistress. The seductress, sort of like Miss Scarlet, I guess. I love her big, beautiful eyes. And she has these long eyelashes. And you have Nathaniel Kent, which kind of has like the $1 Million Man haircut. if you're familiar with that at all. I'm pretty old school, so I don't expect you to know all of this stuff. But anyway, so when you think you've got all the clues that describe a suspect, all three clues, let's say, or, even by a process of elimination where you find out that, the alibi, through the alibis, that that's not the killer. You don't have to have all three clues. You pull this out when you're ready to make the accusation and present it along with telling the weapon and all that other stuff. Now, these don't get flipped over. All these clues don't get flipped over when you're making the accusation at the end. They sort of stay down. They only get flipped over when another detective, aka player, wants to challenge you and believes that you're wrong about something. So let's say they think that it was a different room. So here are the different scenes. There's the basement, closet, garage, pantry, attic, gatehouse, stable, greenhouse, wine cellar, porch. So let's say I thought it was the wine cellar, which it was in the game I played with my friend. And Butler Carruthers was the killer. And he did it with, apparently, and on the game we played, it was with a bookend, which is small, heavy, and metal. And it was fear, which is senseless, heated, and unplanned. So even if there's like one word describing something that doesn't match what they have, so let's say somebody thought it was senseless and unplanned, but vicious instead of heated, that would make it anger. So they might challenge you and say it was anger that was the motive, not fear. Then that's when you have to double check all the chips that are on the board to yourself. And if you're correct about them, you flip them all over. If you're not, then you basically get put out of the game, but you can help with alibis. You just can't like do movement when you roll these dice anymore. And you can't try to like solve the crime anymore as well. You can't voice a suspicion or anything like that, which is also one of the cards. I also have to tell you how to voice a suspicion, but I'll get back to that in a second. So there's two ways you could voice a suspicion when you're like, when you land on the same exact spot as an opponent, the same exact square, you can voice a suspicion by asking two questions. You could ask them, I believe the knife to be sharp, and I believe the position, well, I don't want to say position. I believe that the motive was heated. So then they would have to, if they have that alibi, they'd have to show you. So you can go around the room, and each person that has an alibi, either, let's say, heated, or what was the thing I said earlier? Anyway, you get the idea. Neat, tall, like whatever other word describing what you want to find out. And that's how they prove you wrong. Also, you can get a card that says voice of suspicion in purple, and then that would be another way you can interrogate a person and ask those two questions, but only two. So if they can't disprove you with an alibi that they have, then they can't say it. And even if they have a clue checked off, they can't really tell you what the clue is. The only way to disprove a suspicion is if they have an alibi. So if I had the alibi sharp and showed it to the person in question, then they would mark it on their sheet as an alibi and put A on there. So that's how you voice a suspicion. And overall, I really like this game. I feel like it's better played with more players though. Like maybe 3 to 6. Like I've never played with like 3 people at one time. It's always been like one other person. And it gets pretty tedious, like trying to move around the board. You're basically trying to get the clue. And then, even though there's 2 dice in this game, you don't have to do both rolls. Like you could do either or. You have your choice of either moving 6 or let's say 2 to get where you want, or you could use both, which is 8 overall. So that was one good way to like kind of mix it up a little bit, is that you get like, your choice of 3 movements, depending on where you want to land. So You also have to be careful when you have to take a card. They could be helpful, but at other times, if let's say you're at the library entrance or in the middle of the library entrance and you're trying to get to this blue square, you can get steered in the wrong direction when you land on and take a card and it says go to parlor entrance. So now it's taking you over here. And if you've already know who the suspect is and you have all that marked off, now you're back again at the parlor entrance. So yeah, you want to be careful with that. Also, I forgot to tell you, I know this is kind of like a confusing review slash how to play the game, but I'm going to put these cards away where they're supposed to go. So these suspect cards get placed here, face up, so that you could see the suspect. And then by the main entrance, after you give away, like, let's say the alibi, each person has 2. I have 2. You know, all the chips are put away. I'm just gonna, do this for the sake of showing you when it's all set up. So then these other discs get put right by the main entrance. And then, the only way that you can get back to the main entrance and find out what these other alibis are is if a card directs you there, which tells you, there's cards that say you can go to any entrance, then you can go to main entrance. And then there's ones that direct you directly to the main entrance. In that case, you take one of these discs for you. So you mark it off because it's an alibi and you know that the suspect is no longer small, and you keep it to yourself without showing the other player. So then you have another alibi that helps you to solve the crime. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it wasn't too crazy with me moving around. I'm still getting used to making these videos, but I also wanted to post this because it hasn't been done yet. There's like only one other review of the 1985 version of WHODUNIT, and it's very short and simple. Like, it barely even tells you or describes anything. So I wanted to give you a more elaborate review of this, and I hope you enjoyed it. Anyway, take care, and I will see you again soon, hopefully with another doll or board game review. God bless.